Please welcome back. Thanks for joining our Let's Talk About Data. It's a panel discussion. Apologies for our audience. We started 5 minutes back. We have to start it again. Ritva, again, floor is all yours. Please.
Okay. Hello, everybody. So my name is Ritva Aula. I'm currently working in the 𝗢𝘂𝗍 𝗣𝘀𝗀𝗏, which is a financial group in Finland, largest by market share, especially in retail. I'm working as a head of design authority, meaning that we have a program working with, I don't know if everybody knows about BCBS 239, but it's about the risk data aggregation, and we are also improving our data architecture and data platforms and so on. So I have a team who are interpreting the regulation and instructing people and checking if they do things right. So very interesting topic today here, that what we are discussing. Martin.
Martin, floor is all yours.
Yes, hello. I'm Maarten van der Heijden from the Netherlands. I am retired recently, but I've been working in capital management, insurance, a few banks, and most of all and long in the metal industry. And yeah. So I'm all about thinking about the long-term things.
And he is a great data architect, as he mentioned, and he is also helping me to explore a lot of new ideas. Recently, I wrote an article on DAS architecture, which Martin really helped me out to review it. I wrote it for Bill and Mon. I hope he will approve my monograph. If he approves, it'll go into his Substack. So we'll wait for it. So again, as we missed to record our initial 5 minutes, just for our audience, our today's topic is architecture versus agility. Means why ignoring the foundation will cost you. And we just discussed that 2026 is everybody is reevaluating their data foundation and coherence in the organizations, just because all this agentic AI and generative AI buzzword really crashed. We all know this MIT report where it says 95% of project fails. Marek, do you remember? You guys, you remember, right? A couple of years back, we were talking about it's not going to happen, and that's what happened, right? Everything crashed. So again, let's go towards Daniel, because Daniel is the one who proposed this topic. Let's start this session with Daniel. What was your thought? What was your experience? Why you came up with this topic? Yeah.
Thank you very much, and thanks for the introduction, Ritva and Martin. So since I proposed this topic, things have happened. Things have happened faster than I ever could have imagined. But there is one thing that I'm coming back to constantly when it comes to kind of architecture versus agility. And that is, so what's the long-term cost of doing one or the other? Because I believe in a composable architecture where you can switch in and switch out software. And what I'm seeing here happening as we speak is that we're building up a very big cost down the line where we will not be able to switch out different enterprise software or solutions because we did not think about architecture. We're just going quickly, faster forward, but we're not thinking about the data layer of things. We're just solving UX things. So that was my kind of framing, and for the past few weeks or so, that's been reinforced in what I'm seeing on the market. I'm seeing, and I have a firm belief that what this so-called death of SaaS with vibe coding is a real thing, but it will not be really tangible unless you can get switching costs basically down to zero. Because as long as switching cost is in the millions and millions of dollars, you will not switch. You will keep your enterprise system. You will be locked into your system vendors. So when will that happen? Well, you can actually do it already now if you have a sound architecture. But if you've kind of cheated a bit on the architecture in the past, now you have a huge cost. So that's my kind of current state of things. And it might not just be me, but what do you the other guys here in the meeting think?
Okay, let's move towards Carl. Your thoughts on this topic?
Yeah, my thoughts right now is that if you look in, social media, all Substack or Medium or linked, things that emerges is another dimension of it. The other dimension for me is when Daniel is mentioning this is kind of on the individual level and also on the enterprise level. And when I would talk about the enterprise part, but at the same time, because things are going so fast on the individual level, people are starting to understand that the kind of the IP that's, the thing that we're talking about here, the sovereignty, the mobility, how can I defend myself? How can you prepare yourself for it? So I think there's a double movement right now where people are, I recall a few years back when you have a look on Obsidian, for example, going for Markdown, and suddenly these individual files, the me files, where you actually define crispness around it on that side, I think it's really interesting that you see that both individual and the enterprises are perhaps slower, but it's something happening at the same time. This is kind of something evolutionary that's happening, that the people are actually, what are we supposed to do? How are we going to plan for it? And perhaps that is moving faster right now than the enterprise side. So it's that's my thinking right now. How are you as an individual preparing for what's happening, and can you describe yourself in this semantic world of moving things and having the sovereignty and the mobility and perhaps that's kind of the retreat back to, I don't say it's fatigue, it's more like a combination of fatigue and also how do you prepare? The markdown revolution is coming back in a way. So that's my take on that one.
Awesome. As you mentioned semantic, we go towards Marek. Marek, what you are hearing from your customer end, because we all know that, as we discussed in few previous podcasts and panel discussion, this data product is coming in. I think that's what we are referring here as well. People want to develop and go into production very quickly with a small data products. But challenge is not when you create one. Challenge is when you end up creating 20 odds, and then you see, hey, we should have done the other way around. So Marek, what's your experience?
This is what we were discussing like 2 or 3 years ago when it started. I think nowadays it's even more critical than previously with the new version of 𝗢𝘂 𝗣𝘲𝗂. I've heard clients telling me that they created like 20 apps during 1 week. And I asked them, where are the data? And they said, on the desktops. So it's worse than any Excel times at all. So we started thinking about how are we going to connect all these 1,000 clouds all together and put them into correct data architecture. So, of course, it's a good way for agility and to be agile using new technologies. That was the same with the Snowflake. It was the same with Tableau. It was a flat kind of a version of the data warehousing, just locally. Now Tableau and Power BI and all these click views, they had really big and good foundations of the data architecture because they know it's necessary and it's virtually critical to start with any data product. But the organizations, they don't have the culture and the history in processing the way it should be. So we usually trying to explain, we have a new client, it's not like new, but it's from last year. We started and they had one of the first Salesforce ever installation in CE. So it was very progressive customer in 2010. And they were like, we're full digital, we have everything, and we have a really big development team, like 1,000 people are developing, and we have Jira and everything. And then it came to the data architecture, and they were like, okay, so we are just pulling the data into the systems and reporting them. And we're like, oh, come on. And they were like, yes. And we split it then, in one system. And then we have another system, and it's just reporting there. And we said, like, and where are the processes? And they said, oh, this guy, he left. And the one, he is already retired. So we spent like 9 months, just trying to describe all the processes they were because we couldn't find any foundation for that. So that was almost impossible. And even though they were really agile, so they could do everything in like a week. Okay, we can change everything. Tell us what to do. So we started to explain to them that the architecture and foundation is just the only safe way for the future for any kind of AI or whatever is going to happen. It doesn't matter if it's going to be 𝗂𝗿, if it's going to be another ChatGPTs or Llama modeling. You still need the basics. You need to have the sources correctly described. You need the semantic layer for the business rules. You need the semantic layer for the data modeling. And you need the people to be trained to keep that. And I think that disappeared last month totally with the 𝗂𝗿.
Yeah.
I even had a client, we had the meeting, and he was like, I will show you something next week. And there were 2 owners and 1 financial director. And one of the owners came and he was like, I will show you something. I had this really nice application for the sales management. And they were like, but we implemented, new application 2 months ago. And he was like, hey, but I developed through the weekend, it's much better. It has the better features. Everybody was like, come on. And I asked the CFO, do you have the data from there? He said, I don't know what he's telling about, And it was a real board, where the owner, not the IT guy, the owner came with the applications with the new data model, completely new business rules. And he was like, this is correct. It has to be done like this. And he was like, but we spent last 6 months, really 6 months, just migrating to that new application. And he did that in 24 hours, like, okay, it's wrong. It's totally new. So this agility is good for testing. It's perfect for development, but for the production, we just explain to them, guys, this is not for the production. You can't do this like, you need to wait a month, for testing, for user experience, for data reconciliation. And they were like, oh, we have no time, So we know it's good for client, to be agile. It's perfect for the owners, for the investors, they want everything fast. But for the sustainable revenue development, it's impossible. It's impossible to do that without the foundation and without the proper data architecture. So this is what we are spending the last 3 months, just teaching back to the basics. You need the data layers, you need the reconciliations, you need the testing versions, and so on. And it's going to be harder, believe me.
Yeah. I mean, architecture is not about having many pieces. It's about making sure those pieces are replaceable. Because that's what you're describing, Marek, is that, well, you can build 100 different new apps, interfaces, data products, but what happens if you need to replace one of them? If something happens, if you change your business model, what I'm foreseeing here is a huge lock-in effect. You will not be able to change your business model because you have an app that's built on a data product, that's built on another app, and so on and so forth. You have this kind of hairball architecture that all of you probably are well aware of. And that's going to be a terrible sort of situation for companies. It's going to be great for companies like yours, Marek. You can probably tenfold your staff size just by dealing with these things.
I think Ritva has a similar idea.
This is what I told my team. Okay, so we had this kind of a bunch of the work when the Excels were. So with the 𝗂𝗿, it will be like a 10-folds or 20-folds more. So basically, we are looking forward to that, but it's going to be really, really complex. And I can't really, see the really positive way in the beginning for the companies that are stuck to these kind of micro applications processes now, because it's going to cost them a lot in the near future, very near future. I know that the Anthropic made some changes during the weekend, and like hundreds of thousands of applications crashed. So it was like, and they said, we're never going to come back with that feature. And they were like, okay, but it's critical for us. We need those applications because they are not replaceable. And I know that happened, and they already erased something from the GitHub. So, oh, come on. It's going to be even worse.
Okay.
Yeah.
Ritva, you have
something. I think the original topic that I sometimes wonder if people confuse the agility versus speed, that they think that when I'm agile, I do things fast. But for example, I'm in the bank and regulator is saying that you have to, by the way, have your data ownership in place. You must have your metadata documented. You must have lineage. You must have data quality controls. You must have an integrated, interoperable enterprise data for the most important use cases. And if you think about that, we are a very agile company. So then people interpret, even if they are taught, they interpret it that I can do individually whatever I want, if I have it in my Jira and so on. And then suddenly we have our old systems with a lot of data, warehouses, other things. We are moving to data platform, having many small data products which are federated, owned by different teams. And suddenly, okay, but some discipline is required. You need to make sure that you are using same code value sets. You are documenting your data in the same place, not that you document it in your Confluence or something like that. So in the banks, we are now regulators. I mean, they are more and more looking to the banks and giving notice that you are, by the way, not doing this. And all the vendors are saying to our top leaders that, hey, by taking this AI, you will solve everything like this. So it sells better. The agile is like, you don't need to do anything. And then the top managers go to seminars and they are said that, okay, silver bullet exists. But we all know that actually you need to do this basic foundation. If we now think about if somebody has moved to Azure and then these US things that companies or these other public sector institutions, they decide not to go to US technology, suddenly you would need to rebuild your data product somewhere else. So if you had them as metadata or the models and other things, would it be so difficult? But if you don't have, you have only the technical part, which nobody understands. I think that it's very difficult. We have actually luckily moved forward with this topic, that business is coming along. They are starting to tell their requirements. We are prioritizing data so that we are not, if we have 1,000 fields, we are not saying that everything, that it's important to that everything is now lifted somewhere, but we are saying, okay, these 10 or 20 are the most important and let's start with those. So, but I think that the illusion that AI could yet understand, at least as of yet understand what an individual programmer meant when they coded something. So I don't see it even in the language models, I think. Yeah. But that's why.
But it's the same thing again, kind of what you're saying is kind of good architecture ensures that things are replaceable. That's core of it. But then again, what you're saying, I hope I'm not offending anyone when I'm saying this, but I'm sometimes seeing now that the LLM is kind of like the confession of sins. You know, you go there, you confess your sins, and now everything that you've done poorly in the past is now forgiven, especially when it comes to data and code. You go there to your LLM, you confess, you know what, I have no idea what I did back then. Can you help me? And you put some tokens in, and then you're forgiven because everything is solved. That's not the reality, but I'm kind of seeing that trend that let them fix what I couldn't fix myself.
I think there are believers. I mean, what happened when Hadoop came or different new technologies, whatever, everybody said, okay, this is now the thing. We all go and run to that direction. And then some of us wondered that, are you really going to succeed? No, some good things came out, but still we had the old things running and so on. So I think that there is a tendency to think that everything gets solved, and we are not thinking what can we solve with AI and what not. So I think.
Okay, awesome. I think next, hey John, how are you? Welcome. So before we go to Juan, we go to Martin. Martin, it was very intentional to keep you right in the end of the discussion for this one, because we have been working on that paper as well, where I think this is the whole thing we are also discussing, right? That having a base architecture, not only for data, for AI as well, because I feel that when we talk about data products, we talk about new era, the biggest impact AI has brought in, because AI has amplified everything. Everything is so fast and people have forgot about data. So AI has to absorb inside along with data foundations rather than AI build its own. So Martin, floor is all yours.
Yeah, I enjoyed the AI is your next silver bullet. I get the impression that the silver bullet is always aimed at the buyer.
Yeah.
So that's a first remark. What I experienced is that in all the companies I worked, they had several pieces of software that had to communicate with each other. They are in one process and they have to communicate with each other, which implies that actually there are 4 pieces of software to send and receive data for each piece of software you have, which is all interfacing and it's all bespoke software. Even if you have good stuff, good applications, you always are stuck with this. And I made a nasty calculation for the company I last worked at, and I came to a very conservative calculation of them having 7,000 pieces of small software communicating data to and fro, to and fro, to and fro. So that gives us an idea about what kind of huge load of work we are talking about, because that is the part that is being maintained. Now, we are talking about how agile Claude could help us to build new software, but it will also require data that requires another set of interfaces, making things worse and worse all the time. It is really frightening how big that is if you are not building your software architecture on the data architecture you can support. We don't do it, but it is already taking up most of, or a large part of, the cost of IT. And it is completely underestimated. So that's just the cost aspect. Then about the AI, well, I took the silver bullet. I loved, by the way, also the LLM as your confessor remark. That really works. We have to be clear that there are 2 types of AI. There are the LLMs and there is the advanced analytics. If we don't make that difference, we are not talking about anything. If we say AI, I'm very much in favor of just dropping AI as a word and call it either advanced analytics or LLMs. Because of that, if LLMs are going to create software, all hell will break loose, in my opinion, because of all the interfaces and because it is not maintainable. The software itself is not maintainable. You can maintain it fast if it needs to, but you never know what comes out of it and you never know what it breaks. And that makes me quite frightened, I must say, because everybody thinks he can now program.
True, true, true.
And I think there's an element in addition to what you're saying, Martin, is when you're asking your Lovable or whatever vibe coding tool you're using to create something, you're asking it to create a user interface, you're asking it to create some process automation, you're asking it to create an information model, a data model, and a data store in one. And then you multiply that with number of employees. Let's call it your conservative number, 7,000. Let's say you have a company with 7,000 people. I'm pretty sure that at least half of them will build at least 5 vibe-coded tools in the upcoming years, or in the upcoming year. So you have 3,500 times 5 new apps with new data models, with new data stores, with new process automations, and new user interfaces coming out. And who's going to maintain that technical debt? Well, Marek, sorry, you're probably 100-fold times growth if you're going to sort that mess out.
I'm going to hire the agents from Chinese company that has already some bio robots that can read models, because there are not possible to hire people who understands that. I think it's going to be shortage of people because of this, because that will be a lot of work to building the foundation back, because it collapse someday, definitely.
We already have a lack of data specialists. So how on earth are we going to cover this?
And that's another 3,000 or 13,000 applications to be maintained and repaired and maintained. First repaired and maintained.
My take on this, and going back to the architecture question, is for me, it's quite clear. You need to separate the data layer from the architecture layer, from the sort of automation layer, from the UI, UX layer. That's the only way you can have that, the ability to switch out things. You should be able to switch out your automation layer and improve on that. You shouldn't be able to or change out your UI, UX, create custom UI, UX for different departments and functions, but they should still rely on the same automation and the same information architecture and the same data layer. That's, for me, the only way. But as we have been buying software, monolithic software that combines all of these together, will just accelerate, because now it's like, as I said, 3,500 people will now start buying software, even though they're vibe coding it. And, well, it's a scary future if we're thinking we're going to create some insights and make decisions out of data based on this.
I have a spoiler, but I'll share that spoiler later, how AI is not able to work on a standardized data foundation. I will share it, but after Juan's feedback. Juan, welcome. This session is about, just to lay it out for you, architecture on agility, how foundation is so important. Your take on it, because you are an operational guy. Daniel just gave an example, super good example, that if management is expecting everyone to do a vibe code, so we expect everyone to create 3 to 4, 5 applications in a year, then you multiply. Are you seeing this kind of trend in your organization?
Yeah. Hi everyone. Apologies for being late, but I couldn't make it earlier. The first thing I've seen is that the topic is diverting a bit towards real life problems that we are all suffering, which is good to see that I'm not the only one, that I'm frightened and scared and concerned about that. So to see the good thing, or the good part about it is that. But trying to go back to the topic itself, well, at the end, it is true. You don't have the foundations of architecture. The agility will be impacted. I mean, you cannot have agility without architecture, like having, let's say, a Ferrari with no steering wheel. But the architecture without agility is like having no control on your value. It's a house, right? So with that, is one needs the other and the other needs the one. So with that regard, and landing into the discussion you were just having, I agree with Daniel, but when you separate those, all the parts, data model, the UX, everything, you need something that governs it, and that's where people like the profiles that you have today on the table, the panel, Mustafa, comes into play, right? Because you have the foundations, you have the experience, and you have the means to, when management listens to you and not only listens that there is vibe coding that will accelerate everything, you can have real impact on mitigating what basically AI is going to show in the next few months. That is when you don't have a proper foundation on architecture. What is going to do AI is only not fixing it, but exposing it faster, in my opinion, right? So very, very careful to that, in my opinion. Otherwise, we will struggle because the observability that we have as of today in those domains that we have like properly defined and the boundary conditions that the IT teams manages, they're going to be exposed much more quicker when data is not properly created, when the ETLs or the legacy and the lineage is not properly documented, then is where we're going to suffer, in my opinion. But yeah, today is super interesting topic.
Awesome.
A bit wider than we expected.
Yeah. So let me share the spoiler as we are discussing that we really need a data foundation, right? So my experience, I never worked on vibe coding before. I was a coder, data coder. I was a data engineer / ETL, you call it. But I'm not hands-on anymore. So I've been hearing this vibe coding so long. So a couple of weeks back, I decided to jump onto vibe coding and see how it works. So I started creating a portal like Lundin. So the moment I was using this cursor tool, right? It's a vibe coding tool. So within 2 to 3 hours, I was able to create a lookalike LinkedIn kind of a product, which was super good. I told him, okay, this is what I want. Go to LinkedIn. It picked up the data model. It created the data model. Very good. Now I open a new project. I copy paste that table structure into a new schema. And I ask vibe coding to read that schema and build something. It could not. Which tells us that if AI is creating its own data model, then it still may end up working. But if you create your own data foundation with the best practices, AI is still unable to read it because it's not its data model created. Because when AI creates, it manages all its metadata and all those kind of stuff we have been discussing. Now, what I did, I went in as I was doing all these data modeling techniques, 37, you guys know that, right? I have created few agents. So what I did is I asked agent to create business modeling on top of it, FCO/IM on top of it, then conceptual modeling on top of it. That I'm doing in Cursor, remember that. And then I ask it to create a logical model on it. And then I told it, I tell it that this logical is mapped to this physical. And then when I define this whole metadata inside this AI, and then I ask it, go and create a front end. 90% it created. Because what I did is I set up the foundation, data foundation down there. I added all business metadata. I think for me is business metadata is very core, because from business metadata to FCO/IM metadata, all this modeling up to the logical modeling, if you have as a repository, then physical modeling doesn't care. It's a SQL server, it's a Teradata, it's Oracle, doesn't matter. Up to this whole business modeling is captured by AI, then AI is good. So that was a spoiler for you guys when you say you have to build data foundation. I personally feel AI is not ready if you give a data foundation to AI to read. Anyone want to jump in? I think Carl, you can jump in from now, then we go for rest of the people. That's the next question.
I think that's a good point. Again, slicing things up in different layers as what you can control and who's doing what. The other thing is we're talking about agile as such as everything around the manifesto and the origins. It's for humans to doing things or planning things in good order to be able to develop software in a good. So if we apply agile thinking and saying that if there the agile, how to say, redefined agile manifesto for agents, would that be like we need minimal viable products, MVPs, or is it actually minimal viable authorities you provide? So you actually create different layers of authority. So perhaps that's kind of an addition to this approach. But as I understand, the case you give her Mustafa, is quite interesting. Again, you need to be in control of the different layers of it and planting it to be able to build a data model that you can reuse again as modular pieces of the puzzle, so to say. And yeah.
Ritva, you are mute. You are mute, by the way.
Amateur. But one thing came to my mind about this. I have found the most difficult thing is to get the business layer, the business definitions, requirements, having then documented in the central metadata tool, having the logical, and then, of course, in Lineage, we have problems. Sometimes we have old legacy. We need to use AI or some parsers to get it there. But having the business saying that, okay, this is what I mean in this context, not only talking about agreement on a most general level, but rather understanding, okay, you are now talking about loan agreement with this kind of collaterals and so on. So you need to go on the business level and have those defined. And then when being able to map those and having those definitions, you could have a next development and say that, give them a list that which of these you are interested, because often business people say, I'm interested in agreements, but you would need to ask, are you interested in these or these or these? And then they could say, okay, I'm interested in those. It would make the agility better because you would be much faster in understanding what the requirement is. And then you would also be reusing something you have earlier built if you have done the metadata work. So in the beginning, it's heavy and feels that it's not agile, but when you start getting those things, then you are able to move faster also with AI, but also with real humans. So at least that is my experience. And the heavy part is to get the business coming in and chipping in their requirements.
Actually, you are right. Before I go to Daniel, to you, just to share my stuff with you, Ritva. Actually, you are absolutely right. For me, the starting point is business modeling. There are few ones I can share with you. And FCOIM, I really like it. From there onwards, if you go toward business modeling and end up creating entities and relationship, then normally what I do is I'm doing for last 3-4 months with few customers. I show them onto a whiteboard or on a screen. I show them this is your entities. These are the relationship, which we call it edge. Each edge has these attributes. And I show them and I ask them what you want to create. From that, they created. Once I have an agreement, these are the 5 entities which can create a product for them. Of course, that product has to have an actions and then a value on top of it. And then I suggest them to create a product. Yeah, so yeah, you are right. You have to draft first onto a whiteboard and get an agreement from the business rather than you hear from them and build. Once you create a product, they will tell you this is not what we said. Yeah, Daniel, your thoughts.
Thank you.
Something. Yeah.
Yeah. I have a few comments. I mean, the first one I'm thinking about is in addition to what you said, Ritva, I think there needs to exist many versions of the same truth when it comes to line of business. Not everyone has to say this specific type of loan agreement can only be called this thing. You need to have local dialects. Then, of course, you need to have that shared business metadata where you actually say, this is what we call it centrally, but then there are the local dialects.
Absolutely.
I think you need to have that.
Yeah, absolutely, yes.
Because otherwise you're forcing people to work in a different way. And that's something I've seen throughout my career, that people are quite hard to change. They don't want to change. But in addition to what you said now, Mustafa, and something that was added on top of that is looking at a model of something is very different from actually looking at the data that you work with daily. And my experience is you need to work with both. You need to have the model, and they need to flip the model and say, okay, with the definition, with the limitations that we set up, now we're seeing this list of agreements. Yeah. And then they can say, you know what? There are 5 here that shouldn't be in the list. And then you go back, you tweak your definition, you tweak your business rules, And then you look again and you say, okay, now we have the right kind of conditions in place. So I think there is a need to work with data and model together with sort of side by side. For me, that's kind of the core of agility and architecture. You can have an agile architecture, but then you need to move from the high level conceptual level down to the physical data layer and moving back and forth. I think that's critical. But what I was originally planning to comment on was, you made a great example, Mustafa, of the need for architects and architecture in vibe coding. Because if you do it proper according to the books, then you can actually vibe code good things. Vibe coding inherently is not bad, but you need to give it the right conditions before. You don't start by saying, I have no idea on how to code. I have no idea on how to design a data model. I have no idea how a database works, but create this thing. If you go about it that way, well,
good luck.
The result will be as clueless as you are, but you will not even be able to evaluate and say if this is good or bad, because you don't have the foundational skills. So data foundation, foundational skills, starting with the foundation, I think is kind of the core of the topics we've talked about here today.
Before I go, because we have a 13 minutes stop now, Martin, your take on it, then we go to Marek and then Juan. Martin, same thought on it, that having multiple, building something and then AI work. I know you have a critical take on AI, but what's your take on this one?
What I find interesting is that AI can't read a model, which is logical, because a model is made to support a process or processes. And if you can't explain the processes, you can't explain the model. Neither can we. It's useless to have something without the process that the model is for. And understanding the model, and understanding to me is a very important term that we use too little in the data environment. Understanding the model is about first understanding the process in which it is used, and secondly, understanding how the process is interpreted. And that's the detailed 𝗢𝘂𝗍𝗶𝗀𝗋 way of looking at it.
Awesome. Marek, your take onto it, because as you mentioned, someone has created around 1,000 products right end of that, right? So I just throw out this spoiler that if you end up creating foundation and then ask, let's not say advanced analytics, let's say LLM to read it, LLM are still not good enough to read data models on top of it. Now, what we are saying is building a data foundation, and then we are expecting 20 odd AI, LLM AI generated or vibe generated products to read onto it. How do you see that?
Simply, I think there needs to be kind of what we call the translation layer. The translation layer, it was our job, back in the 10 years ago, we called the translation layer between the business and the IT guys, because IT community was like a separate mankind for the CEOs, and they said, look, I'm not talking to these guys, I don't understand what they're saying. So thankfully, it emerged our jobs back in the day. So we understood the guys and we understood the business. And now it's exactly a new position that needs to be created inside of the companies. And that's the translation guy between the business needs and the AI, the existing AI. So because the LLMs, it's just about not to understand the AI, but to understand the type of the LLM processing, what is behind the scenes on those LLM models, and what is behind the scene on the AI level. Because nowadays, the features are added on weekly basis or removed, and that's even added or removed, and somebody needs to track that. And it's even harder, to understand then what type of the data model do I have? What type of the AI is the best fit to read the model? And if I know the processes, what is the background in my usual metadata, whatever I will call it, the artifacts or the different documentation that needs to be regularly fed into AI models to understand and developing business processes on our side in the data, because there are new columns, there are new requests, there are businesses doing, and it's adding to the model, but AI is not going to read that. It's not going to understand that. It's got the fixed model. Okay, I'm reading this and I understand this. So it's definitely critical to have a new position, which is the business and AI translator, not the IT and the business translator, but now it's going to be two different worlds. There will be AI world. At the moment, we are using, I think, 4 different models for different kind of situations. So we're using Gemini, we are using as well the OpenAI models, and we are using the Claude, and we are also using the Llama models. And then we combine them somehow, because we created as well some apps, but we want somebody to get a curation of those applications and models inside, and maybe find the best possible models for the business needs that are changing. So today it might be Gemini, but tomorrow it might be Claude with the Opus, or with the maybe Sonnet, a new one. And that's very challenging, I think. So definitely next to the CDO, next to the data stewards, next to all these analytics, the legacy data scientists, there has to be this translator between business needs and AI models.
People are going to hate me. Data scientists are gone. I won't say more. Juan, your take.
Well, definitely I have to talk to Marek, because we have developed something similar. And the thing, I see it in 3 pieces, right? First, the data with all the conditions, the skills, and the characteristics. The better it is that data, the better you get the output out of it. Then you have, I'll skip that middle position layer profile that you mentioned, Marek. I go directly to the LLMs. We see the LLMs as a commodity. You said it. I mean, you just use an API against whichever you prefer, because your brother-in-law said that, because your CEO prefers it, because you like it more, whatever. But you use it as a commodity. But the key piece is that in the middle. Rather than have a new profile, what we have deployed is a RAG of agents that basically give us.
Have I lost him, or all of us has lost him? Okay. So it means he was doing so critical. His office has
Gives you
banned
2 things. First,
okay, he's back.
it acts.
Now you're back. You were gone for last 10 seconds, Juan. Hey, you're again gone. Don't worry, I will edit this part. Let him come back.
Okay.
Okay, now you are back.
Apologies again. I don't know what happens here. Spain is bad.
I turned you off because you were, telling something not
critical.
I was saying nasty things about it, right? There you go. It is
so
too
it
clever.
turned you off. It's like
true cliffhanger.
Yeah.
I love AI, by the way.
Yeah, everybody loves AI. So
yeah, please go ahead. I think we missed your whole thing. Yeah.
Well, again, this context layer give us like adding some subject matter experts, meaning keeping human in the loop, gives you the power to not forget anything anymore. Meaning that as soon as you feed that middle layer in proper data and use the LLMs as a commodity, you have a very powerful tool, and that's the way to go. But in order to do that properly, you need to set or to create, let's say, guardrails that makes you the scalability sustainable as well, right? Because we're talking about architecture and agility, and actually you need a minimum architecture that allows you to stay agile at scale, right? And that's the main purpose of it. So you had the proper data, that piece in the middle, and then you lay on some commodities like the LLMs. You will build super powerful tools independently of the or the output or the outcome that you need from them. So that's in a properly industrial case, which is ours, is the way that we are finding the appropriate to go.
Okay, awesome. We have a time check of 4 minutes. We will start with Ritva. 30 seconds for you. Just your takeaway from this session for our audience. Everyone, just 30 seconds for each guy.
So thank you all. It was very interesting to hear different angles of the topic, and I think all agree that there is some work to be done to get the foundation right, but also to use AI wisely. I think that is also something that we should learn to do that instead of saying that one size fits all and so on. But I really enjoyed the discussion and agree that without proper attention, companies will fail dramatically because the noise of data and AI applications and whatever will be too big. Thank you all.
Thank you. Martin.
Yeah, I totally agree, Ritva. It's going to be extremely costly if we start building very agile, but without architecture, and let the companies get their basics right first. But it's hard. It's hard to get companies to do that.
Carl.
Well, first of all, it was very nice to see you all. That was the first step. But the other aspect is everything is touched by discussions around AI, and we're talking about large language models, and there's so much happening at the same time. Architecture, without any doubt, is needed to be having things in good order. We are planning things, we want something, we have the intent, but at the same time we have this new, how do you say, players around that servants, agents that are helping us doing things. But I get to the point where you ask yourself what happens in a model world, what would happen next. It's so much happening at the same time very quickly, but still the foundations around knowing what to do and speaking the language of humans, what we need to do, it's still needed. So that's my takeaway.
Marek.
Just one
Question
line.
is takeaway.
Don't create another Excel but in an AI world, it's the same approach, and it's never gonna work. It's never gonna work. It will cost you millions.
Juan.
Well, super nice to see you all guys again. Thanks for being late once again. But to summarize it a bit, I mean, agility is not about, let's say, moving fast. It's like being able to change your direction safely, let's say, right? And properly. And for that, you need architecture and proper foundations. And on top of it, considering that the AI is a bit manipulating everything and it's concentrating the debate, it's good to see that the people that has the right foundations will eventually rule everything again. Let's the wave a bit of this. Everybody is getting excited, but at the end of the day, the people that properly knows this business they will be the ones that will actually get everything back to the proper channels and the proper direction.
Last but not the least, the guy who proposed this topic, Daniel.
Yeah, I think it's quite clear we should invest in Marek's company. He's got a bright future ahead of him. But in addition, similar to what Juan said just now, that agility is not about how fast you can code or develop new things. It needs to be about how you can safely change, or safely and cheaply, how safe and cheaply you can change stuff. Because that's going to be the core of it, right? Unless we can change, we're just having a new lock-in, but multiplying it by hundreds or thousands X what we have today.
Awesome. I think we are right on time. It's 7 p.m. over here. Thank you so much again. It was a pleasure talking to you. I think today's session was a great session. Heard from different part of the world. on the same topic. I hope our audience will like it. Thank you so much, everyone. And hopefully we can have another one in a quarter's time like we normally do. And we find another topic to discuss. Thank you so much. Have a nice day. Have a nice weekend, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you, Mustafa.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
It was
Thank you.
great.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Have
Have
a
a
good
nice
one.
weekend.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Bye.